Saffron Baggallay, thank you so much for joining me. This is still August. I feel like I'm going to time warp a little bit, but it is still August, and it is all about self-love. We've named this Heart Alchemy, and we are looking at transmuting self-perception with the Enneagram. Now, last time we kind of went into the head types first, and then a little bit body types, and then we went heart. So let's see what happens if we start with the heart types, which is 2, 3, 4. I don't know why I was thinking about that. And what is self-perception like? How are you actually first?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm well. I'm starting to think already, and I always feel at this point a little bit like a sangoma or like a medicine woman, who's like thinking, okay, the script of this one, which is why I'm enjoying this conversation with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the Enneagram is so versatile, can be plugged into any concepts or, yes, I mean, obviously in the context of Heart Alchemy, hello to you and thank you for having me. Yeah, it's lovely to start with the Heart Triad. And yeah, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Enneagram, the Heart Triad represents the lens of the 3 and the 2 and the 4. I know, Michelle, that you are a 4, so you belong to this triad. Actually, you as a 4 would have all of this in you, because if the 4 is your lead type, then 2 is what for you is your stress point. And then the 3 could be a wing.
Yes, which it isn't, because I do not connect with the 3 very much, strangely enough. It's
then it sits in your shadow, then it's your development. Because she is there, but she's sitting in the shadow. And actually, from what I think is, what comes up for me immediately is, for you, if I would sort of, writing you your script as your spiritual sangoma, magic pixie, I would say that your shadow work or your inner child work almost would be to do that 3, owning your self-worth and your value and earning money because of it, and being an entrepreneur and doing all of that stuff, which your 3 is probably would help you with. And I would say that to anybody with your profile that hadn't seen it yet. I don't know what your story is, I'm not commenting necessarily on your life. I'm working with what the Enneagram can mirror for us. We spoke in the other conversation about maps and mirrors and all that.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to start this evening talking about the 3.
Yeah. See, and that's what I love, because I love Jung's work, Carl Jung, and there's the favorite quote of his is, "What you resist persists," and that's very much for me around the kind of 3. Because for me, with my interpretation of the 3, which I might very well be wrong, is very much showy. The queen, the I am the center of this space, and that is something that I really struggle with. I'd rather my superpower. So my son is 11, and he always asks these questions like, "What superpower would you choose?" And my superpower is invisibility, because that's not superpower, but that's the thing that I would be able to do, is to observe, and that's not very much a 3 thing, I don't think.
Well, it can be.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty and complexity of the Enneagram. And in fact, 3s and a lot of what self-preservation 3s in particular really have, and it's part of their struggle, is this sense, and in fact all 3s do, this sense of, I'm a fraud. And so you know what? Let me just say this. Now I'm starting to get into this conversation. The great paradox of every single human, and that's how every single human listening to us this evening, it can relate to the three. The great paradox with every human is that every human really wants to be seen in the best light by others, and yet all of us are afraid of being seen. And that, more than anything, is what the three embodies.
Mm.
And I think that's sort of, when you spoke about that thing of being invisible, I thought, well, actually, that's their conundrum, in that they are invisible to themselves often.
Mm.
They have this mask. More than any of the other types, they wear a mask that
Mm.
that is the image of themselves. So threes unconsciously create an image of themselves. We call this, in the Enneagram language, we call this identification. And I mean, firstly, all of us humans, the threes in particular, struggle with this. Is like, to love myself, I've got to find out who I am. Who am I loving?
Yeah. Which is also very much a full thing, that existential, constant existential crisis situation.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Mm.
I think it's true for all humans, but I think that the heart types have this on steroids.
Yeah.
And where this will play out for the four is, am I being authentic? Am I being true to myself? Am I being real? Whereas, and this is also true for threes, there's a lot of similarity.
Yeah.
The three isn't asking so much, am I being true to myself, as much as they're going, who who am I? Or who, no, the unconscious three in personality is going, what does the audience want to see?
So what do I want to look like?
Yeah.
That's the three that I understand. Like, what am I portraying?
How do I impress the audience? That's their
Mm.
quest. Unconsciously, how do I impress the audience? Whoever the audience might be. They might be their parents, they might be their swimming teacher, they might be their religious leader, they might be, the audience is everybody, though. The cultural norms of whatever the culture of the three belongs to becomes the audience. Like, it's, and this results actually in a huge sense of pressure from for them.
Internal pressure. So it's that perception, that self-perception. Am I measuring up to what I should look like?
Yeah,
For the four, feels very inauthentic because you haven't done the hard work. You haven't gone to the dark places, so you can't just claim
yeah,
it.
yeah. And my invitation to you would be to go, maybe they have. Maybe they just don't look like the same dark places you went.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think they really do struggle internally.
Mm. Yeah, no, I don't doubt that at all, because I think it is, um, for them, a very difficult place to see the real them. You know,
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
where the self-perception is that it's not measured against the audience.
yeah. So this is why the heart types are such a beautiful place to start when we're talking about transmuting our self-perception. Because if there is anybody on the Enneagram that struggles with their self-perception, it's heart types.
Mm.
What is my perception of myself without the audience's perception of me? Because all heart types, fours, threes, and twos, they all define a lot of their identity and a lot of how they perceive themselves and how they feel about themselves, and what they do with their excess energy by the audience. Either rebelling against the audience, being the anti-hero in the fours case, or
Yeah.
pleasing the audience, which is the twos, or impressing the audience, which is the three.
Mm.
So Yeah, when we talk in the Enneagram about shame being the unconscious driver for this triad, anger was for or fear, but shame for this triad. What we're really meaning by that is that the ego in the 3, the 4, and the 2 comes to believe that or sets up the belief or kind of perpetuates whatever this belief that I'm not worthy. I must disconnect from who I am. Because who I am isn't worthy. And so if I disconnect from that and create an image of myself, then I'll be acceptable to this existence, to this life, to this experience, to this community, to this audience, whatever. Do you see?
Yeah. Interesting. And they each do it differently.
Yes.
The two connects, how can I assist, like how can I make it better for others? Where the 3, and this is my perception, so you must correct me, but the 3 is more, well, I am good at, I look like I'm good enough, so look at me. And there's the 4 is more like, well, I'm going to be the anti-hero, as you say, and I'm going to just throw all your your ideas out the window and make you think about it a little bit more. But I'm still not good enough. And I wonder if it is different for the different subtypes. So you have your self-preservation that you mentioned, but there's also
Yes.
the social and the sexual. So would they then look at it from a different angle?
Yeah, certainly. And also there would be a different code, there would be a different medicine, there would be a different script for each individual, depending on their type, their subtype, their level of health, their wing, their line structure, lots of stuff. But yeah, if I were to go into that a little bit to sort of illustrate this point for those of you listening who are new to the Enneagram, because it must sound terribly complicated, it isn't actually as complicated as it sounds. Yeah, I think that for the 4, the 3, and the 2, the subtypes make a huge difference when it comes to the path for transmuting our self-perception of ourselves and self-love and practicing that, but also for others understanding the heart types. And I don't think any of the types differ as much amongst themselves as the 4 does. Typical 4 has to be different, more complex.
Yeah.
Because for example, the self-preservation 4 and the sexual 4 and the social 4 look completely different from one another. And so this, in my opinion, in my experience as well, is the most misunderstood from a typing perspective type. And often more than I think other types often gets mistyped.
Yeah.
And 4s are the ones that are mistyping themselves the most because they want to be contrary, so they don't want to be a 4, so then they try and squeeze themselves somewhere else, and they can fit because they are that kind of agile.
Yeah.
And so I mean, if you want, I can talk about the subtypes.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I think there's a lot of range. So you have your type, and then in your type you have, and especially, I mean, I talk about the 4 because I've always thought that I was a 5, or I always, in assessments I was seen as a 5, which never really fit. It almost fits, but then you have the 4 self-praise, which is very different than the 4 social or the 4 sexual. It's this need for information is inherent, but there's more depth for me, as I'm learning and understanding the Enneagram specifically. So please do, kind of enlighten us more around these subtypes and how they differ. In maybe the 4 would be interesting.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, all heart types, 3s, 4s, and 2s, are all looking for unconsciously like affirmation from the audience. So they're all creating an image of themselves that will on some level get the audience's attention. And then if I break that down to the 4 is on some level, consciously or unconsciously, it doesn't matter, getting the audience's attention and getting the audience specifically to see this person as somehow special, unique, out of the ordinary, fabulous, extra.
Yeah.
And that's for the 4, the attention they desire to affirm that they are worthy of a connection, which is ultimately what 4s are seeking. Now, in the sexual instinct, that connection will be one-on-one with something significant, whether that's a lover or whether that's a fellow competitor that they're going to take down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, you better believe
it. Yeah.
This is a fierce competitor. In the social instinct, it's that connection with the whole group, which also means the loss of connection with that whole group, which is really devastating. And then in the self-preservation instinct, it's this loss of connection with the self.
Yeah, which is intense because in that connection to self, everything else is involved as well.
Absolutely. It's a nightmare. It's a disaster. So interestingly, even though this is the 4 that we call the counter type, it's the 4 that doesn't look like the 4 and often gets mistyped for 7s, for 5s, for 3s. Man, is this the most tragic, I think, and actually heartbreaking of all the 4s. So I'll describe them for you if you like.
Yeah.
The way that the subtypes work, the way that we break the 3, the types up into what we call these 3 subtypes, for those of you just learning the Enneagram, is we look at it from a psychological dimension. How were you psychologically nurtured and or protected in your early childhood development? And if there's a distortion, I just use the word distortion because I don't want to get into anybody's story. This isn't the forum. But if there was a distortion with the mother or nurturing figure, then there's usually a distortion in the self-preservation instinct. Because the self-praise instinct in all of us gets distorted then around our own self-nurturing, either a lack thereof, a neglect thereof, or an over-attention to, which can include physical nurturing, emotional, mental nurturing, etc. That's what all self-praise people do. And then, of course, resources, because if I'm not nurtured, then I've got to nurture myself, which means I've got to have enough money and enough this, and that brings up a little bit of anxiety, regardless of any of the types. So the self-praise 4 looks a little bit more anxious than the other 4. They can be a bit more kind of responsible and less carefree because they are worried about money and taking care of logistics, and because the self-praise instinct will take care of that.
Yeah.
But boy, if it's unhealthy, boy, can it be a shit show, because the 4 can weather suffering. This is your hoarder, especially if they've got a 5 win. They can't bear to, they never even dream of throwing away a freaking newspaper article from 19 Footsat because it carried some bloody nostalgic memory. This is a self-praise 4 who's unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, yeah.
It can be really dark, Michelle.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. Yeah. Because that's a form of connection, isn't it? That form of...
And getting attention.
Yeah.
And the big thing for this one, listen to this for complex. The unconscious belief for the self-praise 4 is the more I suffer, the more I can stoically suffer and weather through, the more I prove that I'm worthy of love.
Yeah, but there's no end to the suffering, though. So,
That's the
so the
thing.
love doesn't get to go in.
Well, unless I feel worthy of real love, then no love goes in, and then I just perpetuate the suffering.
Mm.
This is of all the fours, the one sort of in most danger of falling into depression, getting into cutting, getting into suicidal thoughts, getting into, because they're really stoic about their suffering. They don't share it. And because of that, they often don't look like a four, because the four is glibly typed as the feeling center that expresses themselves. Well, the self-praise four doesn't express their feelings.
Yeah.
It's actually a very complicated human that I have a lot of compassion for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yet there is integration. So there's not no hope for the self-praise.
No. So the integration point is at 1.
Yeah.
And so when this human is healthy, they are a machine of kind of magnificent, artistic, creative beauty that works like a Swiss clock.
Yeah. And that's where things kind of aim to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because all fours, when they've integrated their 1, if they're in their security point, in their child heart, if they actually find their own self, their truth, they are very pragmatic, they're very fair, they're very practical, they're very task orientated, and they're very righteous.
Yeah.
They're really clean living folk, which is why when they're the other direction, they're thought of as the kind of emotional roller coaster lunatic that you don't want near your family gatherings.
Yes.
Because they can be that volatile and like crazy lunatic, antisocial kind of, oh my gosh, they think of Patty kind of vibe.
Yeah.
You know, that's the kind of extreme version of your fours, which they can go to, man, believe me.
Exactly. And that's why balance is such an important thing.
Yes, that's the quest. Yeah.
Because,
For all
you know,
fours.
if you go to the 5 wing, which is a head
Yeah.
type, and then you
Yeah.
integrate your, 1, then
Your
you have
one.
your body type. So you have a little bit more of a balanced. But
Yes.
internally, I think the 4, that self-praise for, still there's a lot going on.
Oh,
And
so much.
self-perception is an interesting space. And I think, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we call them the reckless abandoner.
Yeah.
These are the people that, you know, go rally car driving and sleep under bridges with homeless people just so that they can feel alive and know what it's like, and, you know, connect to like insane quests and artistic whatever. Yeah. So that's, yeah, they're really, really physically tough.
Mm.
They withstand an insane amount of suffering. So these are ballet dancers, that energy, gymnasts, that kind of energy, even if they aren't, or the, you know what I mean by that,
Yeah.
sort of physical stoic with beauty.
Yeah.
Your social 4, on the other hand, may I move on?
Mm.
Your social 4 is called shame.
Mm.
This really is Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh.
Oh. Yeah.
This is your kind of classic quintessential 4, you know, the one that gets really down. Oh, well.
No. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. And that's because this person more than any of the other 4s, you know, does feel like an extraterrestrial, like an alien. I mean, I've heard it all. I caught the wrong spaceship. These are all quotes from social 4s that I've trained and coached over the years. I've caught the wrong spaceship. I feel like an extraterrestrial. I'm an alien on the planet.
Mm.
I don't know where I belong. I mean, that's their flipping thing. Where does, you know, how does this group perceive me?
Mm.
That's all social instinct dominance. All social instinct dominance, regardless of the type. But then you've got the added thing of the 4, and I'm not good enough, and envy, and I'm comparing myself to the whole world. Oh, so this is, your Amy Winehouse, your Kurt
Yeah.
Cobain.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember, and this as a 7, I don't have a lot of patience for this. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm.
I have had to learn to go, wow, this is coming from a real place, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's intense. I mean, I can just feel it when you're talking about that. That is an intense um experience.
Yeah. And of all the 4s, this is the 4 that has the cave.
Mm.
And all 4s exactly know what I mean by the cave. You just
Mhm.
didn't look at me like I was crazy. You went,
No.
And I'm like, no, that's fishing for 4. If
Yeah.
you weren't a 4, you go, what do you mean by the cave?
Yeah. You know it well. Yes.
Yeah. So what is the cave? Tell us for all 4s.
Well, my perception of the cave, it's that withdrawal. I think I've gone once 2 weeks just not speaking. I just stopped speaking for 2 weeks because there was no, it was the cave. It was, yeah, it's a processing space, I suppose. Um, but it's different. I'm a self-pres for, and I can see from a social force perspective, it's, to that belonging element, that group element, which isn't there necessarily for me. It's more, I need to process. I need to be inside here. So, even if my eyes can be closed, that's a bit better. And talking becomes a thing that is unnecessary. It's an energy that doesn't need to be spent.
Yes, yes. And that is a little bit of the 5 in you, but
Mm,
it's true for self-praise 4s too. I'm processing, I'm wallowing, I'm contemplating, I am whatever it is, and I need that. And 4s do. And for those of you listening, if you are in a relationship with a 4, like that is just something you're going to have to learn to deal with, because that's what 4s do. They go into this kind of milieu of overthinking and overfeeling and being oversensitive, and just leave them there until they get out of it, because there's nothing. It actually pisses them off and upsets them more. You're actually feeding the monster by giving them attention.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
And
it's not a thing for, as you say, for attention. It's just I need to kind of feel through this, and it's very internal. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Look, there may be some people that are seeking attention and others that really aren't. I do think you've got a 5 wing. I think probably a sexual 4 with a 3 wing is probably looking for a bit more attention than you, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. But I mean, it's not always for attention. It's not looking, victim. The victim mode isn't uh,
Yeah,
necessary.
yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
And thank you for saying that, Michelle. And those of you listening, yeah, this is really not a game or some kind of pretense.
Mm.
The feelings and the experience is genuine and very, very real. So it's not at all something that you don't take seriously or um, hold with care. Definitely,
Yeah.
especially in an era of mental ill health.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've gone over time because I'm so interested.
I was going to talk about the sexual four, but we'll have to talk about
Yeah,
more stuff soon. All your listeners will have to book time with me.
I think so, definitely. Because the sexual four is again very different. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
very different. That's
yeah.
called competition.
Uh,
Boy, you better watch your back if you are the target of a sexual force competition, whether it's to love you or to win against you or to take you down.
See, that's so interesting because it's so different. For I think for or for me, I can just speak for me. Competition is so disruptive. Like collaboration and connection is so much more important.
No, 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 baby. This is like, if I set out to compare myself to you, I've got to beat you. because I can't be the loser. This is the energy of gaming, the
Yeah.
gaming culture,
Yeah.
where they've got to get back at the one that won.
Mm.
That's it. So we'll have to talk about that next time, my darling.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me again. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to pop the link to Introduction to the Enneagram course with the fabulous Saffron um, in the descriptions of the various videos. And I will see you same place, same time in 2 weeks' time.
I can't wait. I love talking to you. Thank
Me
you, Michelle.
too. Thank you.
Bye bye.